Good morning. I wanted to respond to a question from Henny. Have I said your name right, Hannah? Hannah? Hannah, Henny. And I don't know. You can tell me if I got that right. Um, she asks, what do you think of intuitive eating? Oh my gosh, what a juicy question. I have so much to say about this. I'm going to give you the 5 minute answer, and then another day, or maybe in my podcast perhaps, I'll sit down and make a video where I really look through the the elements of intuitive eating in a bit more detail. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, intuitive eating is a book written by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, and they outlined 10 principles for coming back to your body's natural ability to regulate the amount and the kind of food that you eat and letting your appetite guide you, rather than conforming to a bunch of intellectual diet rules that you've taken on. And this work that they did was so needed and is still so valuable. And we are still living in, to a large extent, within diet culture. And they were really, they were both seeing people as clinicians, coming to them time and time again, who were disordered in their eating as a result of all their diet attempts. And I still see clients every day who have a lot of emotional baggage from a lifetime of dieting. And it's my absolute wish that my girls will grow up and go forward into a culture where dieting was like really old fashioned, where that's what our grandparents did. But right now, there's generation after generation of people, and I'm seeing clients who are in their 60s and 50s and 40s and 30s, and we're all having to undo a lot of the conditioning that we've grown up with before we can even begin to learn the skills of eating in a way that doesn't drive ourselves absolutely potty. And so I'm so grateful to intuitive eating for kind of popularizing that approach. And I came across it first after I'd trained to be an eating psychology coach with the Institute of the Psychology of Eating. And there, Mark David, who leads that school, was talking a lot about body wisdom. And afterwards I was left with questions of like, well, how do I tell the difference between my body wisdom telling me I'm hungry and just thinking that I'm hungry because I fancy something, or thinking that I'm hungry because of habit, or thinking that I'm hungry because actually I need to fulfill an emotional need because I'm trying to procrastinate about my work, or having self-doubt that I'm not going to be able to do my work, or that kind of thing. So intuitive eating was great because it sort of breaks down the elements. The 10 principles are really interesting because they break down the elements of things that you would need to, areas that you'd need to address. And their principles follow things like respecting your body and moving for fun instead of like in a performance led kind of athletic vibe. Coping with your emotions with kindness. There's nothing in there that I would possibly argue with, and I would really recommend anybody to dig in. But I also found that the picture that's painted of intuitive eating is like, this is what normal eating looks like. And it's almost like looking at a beautiful view of Tuscany and a painting on the wall. And it doesn't necessarily tell you how to step in to that painting. it's not necessarily a methodology, it's a framework. And how people apply that methodology is very, very varied. So you'll find that there are certified intuitive eating coaches who really try to apply those principles in a very, very faithful way. I am not an intuitive eating counsellor. I'm not intuitive eating certified, and I don't ever say that what I'm teaching are the intuitive eating principles, although there are so many elements of becoming a sensational eater, which is my own method, which have things in common. So I am interested in the learnings that we get from intuitive eating and mindful eating and bringing them back into a kind of using our body's senses to give us the information that we need about when we are definitely hungry and need to eat, and when we are not and are emotionally hungry or stuck in habit loop and our brains are sending us neurological junk to go and eat. Okay, so I am really interested in the body's signals there, and I'm also really, really interested in letting go of all of the baggage around restrictive thinking. Now, that's also part of health at every size movement, which also I'm not registered with health at every size. So you'll find that a lot of intuitive eating coaches and health at every size go together. And the idea of restriction is very, very present in Linda Bacon's book, Health at Every Size. Now, I should also say that those two books, Intuitive Eating and Health at Every Size, are a couple of decades old now, and that there are new people who are making great work in the body positivity movement, which is much more about intersectionality, much more about applying, analysing how some of what we've inherited is showing up in maybe pernicious ways. And pernicious, I think that was a poor choice of words, because it's showing up in like subtler ways, I suppose, is what I'm saying. So all of that, but at the same time, when I tried to apply intuitive eating principles myself, I got confused quite quickly. I think I would need to go and be mentored properly by one of the many intuitive eating coaches to really get deeper into the nuances of that. And here's part of where I felt like I needed to learn more, and where I've gone elsewhere outside the intuitive eating community to learn more. One area is around, so one of the intuitive eating principles is to challenge the food police, and that's like trying to get away from the part of your brain that tells you that you're bad if you eat chocolate and you're good if you eat salad. And I absolutely agree, like removing all that moral stigma from food is great, but I also think that there's extra nuances to find around how to regulate ourselves in respect of sugar and junk food, and that because those kinds of food are especially intense for us, and I'm not 100% convinced that my body will ever send up, yeah, I've had enough, I'm satisfied signals with certain foods. That's not to say I'm demonizing those foods. It's more to say that I consider that those foods, because they are artificial, that my body is intuitively able to guide me on many counts. But there are certain foods that are designed to go under your intuition's radar, and figuring out exactly where you as an eater would like to, how you would like to manage those foods is a really personal process, and that's why in my Sensational Eater program we spend a whole month looking at obsession and addiction and experimenting with different pathways to figure out how those foods fit into our life long term, or not. Some people decide to just be without them, and if not, to decide that from a place that's not restrictive. Okay, and another place that that I got super confused was around unconditional permission to eat. So one of the principles says, give yourself unconditional permission to eat. And when I put weight loss on the back burner and I gave myself unconditional permission to eat the foods that had been off limits before, not only did I gain weight, which was something I knew that might happen, but I also did not be eating foods without really questioning the decision-making process that I was making. Also just led me into a bit of a free-for-all. And now intuitive eating is not suggesting that you go into a free-for-all, right? But that's where I went with it. And actually I would rephrase that personally. I would say, give yourself unconditional permission to choose to eat. And a lot of my work with my clients and with people following my sensational eater method comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's about figuring out, well, okay, how can I choose not to eat and it still not feel restrictive? It's not feel like I'm telling myself I'm not allowed to, it not feel like I'm trying to stick to a rule. It's more empowering than that. It's me taking choices over what I do and taking responsibility for what I do. And I guess another area where I've had to learn more is into the principle of emotional eating and being kind to yourself about your emotions. But actually, that's one principle in intuitive eating. And actually, emotions and eating are a huge topic, and it really helps. It has helped me, and it helps with my clients a lot to really get specific about how particular emotions work and how they function and how they show up for us and how to manage them and how to understand what the value of them is and how to navigate them and feel them better and process them better. And so for me, the principles themselves don't provide all of the tools that are needed in order to become people who are capable of making the 267 food decisions that we're said to make every single day. Because that decision making requires us understanding our thoughts and feelings in quite a lot of detail. And that's where cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy have really, really come together for me. And so that's where I work. But, intuitive eating is over there and mindful eating is over there. And they have all enriched my experience and understanding as a food psychology coach so far. And I really hope that at some point I get to go deeper into intuitive eating myself as well, and maybe enjoy an intuitive eating mentor circle. If you would like to know more about intuitive eating, my gosh, go and look at the Food Psych podcast, for example, which only interviews people working in that space. But personally, I think that we are building on those principles all the time, and that our understanding of food psychology is evolving, and that was one really important cultural step that's been taken and is an ongoing process. I guess the last thing, it would be just terrible if I didn't mention weight. I work with people on weight loss, but often we have to spend quite a lot of time before we go into weight loss, and that's why the first 4 months of my Sensational Eater program, when I'm coaching people, we just do groundwork. We just focus on losing restriction. We just focus on other elements, and none of the work that the Sensational Eater program does give you the skills to lose weight in your life, but the focus is not weight. The focus is you being in integrity of your decisions around food. And I do think that the intuitive eating community absolutely hate that people would talk about weight loss overtly, because any focus on weight loss can really because we've spent so much time in this intellectual space trying to work alongside rules, that whenever we focus on weight loss, it tends to get in the way of us actually learning the skills that we need to learn. And so I do agree, we put weight loss on the back burner, but I also don't subscribe to a school of thought that says we must never talk about weight, and that any desire to lose weight is only people pleasing. I think there's a contingent of people who would like to lose weight for themselves, even if they clean up their brain and don't think of fat as bad, or fat as unhealthy, or fat as unattractive, and even if they accept themselves where they are, that they might also feel that they also come to me saying, and please can I lose weight, sometimes for health reasons, sometimes for reasons of mobility, sometimes because they know it would feel better just the way that they move through the world. And I would honor anybody's inner sense of how they would feel good in their body. And it's really important to peel that apart from body image. Like, really, it is so important to work on body image separately, so that you're not trying to solve your self-opinion by slimming or by being controlling with food, that your self-opinion happens over here in your thoughts and feelings, but over there, why can't weight loss be one of your goals without it being the one drum that every other part of you has to march along to? In fact, why can't weight loss be a beautiful side effect of learning to be in control of your brain, of your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, and ultimately your habitual eating behaviors? All right, Hanne or Henny, thank you for your question. I hope that's given you lots of food for thought. I hope that you've come away with loads more questions from what I've said. And if so, please pop them in the comments, because I feel like this is a debate that gets shut down a lot within the intuitive eating community, because they find it very triggering to talk about weight, and I don't. I'm comfortable talking about weight, and I feel like it would have been so helpful if there would have been somebody who was willing to join the dots for me about weight, and using the eating skills that we're born with, and our inner sense of hunger and fullness to guide us as well. Okay, great. I've enjoyed that rant. And now it's time for breakfast.